Welcome to Wire Guild. This tutorial I've called Vine Earrings, and they're very pretty little delicate tendril-like earrings with teeny tiny little beads on them. Now your materials are so fluid, it's unbelievable. I used 2 pieces of 4" of silver, which was 18 gauge or 1mm. However, you could use 20 gauge or 0.8mm if you wanted. It would work just as well. I used a little bit of finer wire to add the beads on, as you'll see, and I used various beads. Now I'm going to go through the beads and things that I've used so that you can see that, you know, it's so open, you can use anything you like on them. This is what I've pulled together. I've got my 2 pieces of wire, so that's sort of 10 centimeters of 4". And then I've got some teeny tiny little peridot beads. They're about 2mm. I've got some little emeralds, some more little peridot, can you see these are little onion briolettes? They're like little fat briolettes with the hole through the top, and some amethyst and some silver beads. Really, whatever you have that's little, it needs to be tiny, they need to be delicate. The last thing you want is something pulling your ear off. So you start at the bottom of the earring, and I've got both my wires together, and I'm going to create a loop. So both wires together onto the round nose pliers. Make sure that tip is not sticking out at all, because we want a nice circular round shape. If you leave any wire sticking out at the end of the pliers, you'll find that you've got a straight bit, and we don't want that. We want the whole thing shaped. So I'm just making sure that the wires touch. Put our wires back together, make sure they're in the same place, and then let's put a little bend in that way. Bend it back. Whatever I do here, it doesn't matter. You don't need to sit at home thinking, oh dear, she put a bend in there and I can't get a bend in there, mine won't do it. I'm going to put a curl in here, but if you want to, great. If you don't want, it doesn't matter. It's meant to be a swirly, curly, bendy tendril. It's not meant to be, you know, exact. The only thing that it is it's meant to be a mirror image of the other one. So I'm just going to put, no I'm not, I'm going to put that piece of wire with it so that they're both alike. If you keep both pieces of wire together while you're doing the manipulation, even if they slip ever slightly, it doesn't matter. So I've just done like an S bend, and then a wiggle back up, so it's going to look like it's got a little pregnant bump or something. There we go. It doesn't matter as long as you've got a mirror image of both sides. So they could twirl and curl, they could bend up and down. It doesn't matter. But we're going to put beads on, so don't get too giddy, because if you've got too many twists and twirls and swirls, you will lose them underneath the beads. This is only a framework, and all I'm doing now is just tweaking and straightening things up a little bit, making sure that the wires are touching where they're meant to touch, and just making them so it's generally a straightish line that's going to hang down from the earring, and of course that they match. It seems to be a big thing with earrings, can't imagine why. I'm going to hammer these. You don't have to if you don't want, or if you don't have a hammer. It really doesn't make any difference at all. I like to hammer them because it gives them a little bit of extra strength, and we're about to get deafened, and also because where the wire has crossed over itself, where it's curled over, I like the way it sort of flattens those two together. I like the way that looks. Obviously, if you're very, very posh and you've got a rolling mill, can you see how it's flat there? I like that bit. Yeah, straighten it up a bit. If you're very posh and you've got a rolling mill, you can just pass it through your own rolling mill, or just the end bit anyway, which would be really great. But a hammer works just as well. Oh, I have been known to use all sorts of other things. Now, can you see how that's opened? Because the metal's been beaten, it's sort of splayed out. Because it's splayed out, that end is no longer touching. So I want to make it so that that's touching again. There we go. Don't worry about it opening up once the beads are on. I'm going to show you a way of actually holding that firm and stopping any movement with a different bead. So I've got my 2 frames. I'm just going to get some finer wire. It's a good way of using up odds and ends of finer wire that you've got kicking around. So I'm going to start with the largest of my beads. I always like to start with the biggest bead first and then work my way back down. In design forms, it's easier to start with the biggest and then fill in the little gaps. So I've got a very, very runaway bead. Get back here. Probably about 1.5 inches of wire that I've just bent through and bent up, and then with the longer length I'm just spiraling it around fairly loosely. Once I've gone around 2 or 3 times I can get my finger and thumb against it. There we go. And then I can wrap around between the wire and the bead. I'm going around lots of times. And then just bring it tight to the wire. Oh, right, my dog's just gone absolutely berserk. Let me just get this to a stopping spot and I'll go see what on earth is wrong with her. Pop that down. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, back again. Delivery men, you know, they're not organised. They don't turn up when I want them. Right, let's carry on wrapping this around. There we go. So let's get that round. And I'm just going to, that's it, trim. I'm going to get the pliers right around. Nice and close. And press that down. Don't worry about getting this tighter. This is meant to be organic and floral and nature. And nothing in nature lies parallel to each other. Well, maybe rocks do, but growing things don't tend to. So we want nice wiggledy, higgledy piggledy. So I'm going to make a little curl in the top now around my round nose pliers, little loop, and I've just taken it down and gone past so that I can pass that into the loop that we made on the bottom. My round nose pliers are now going to go over the top to hold it all together, and then wrap around. There we go. All the way around. And you can go into the thick bit, you can stay down in the thin bits, whatever you feel like. There we go. So we've got a nice little dangle. Now I'm going to do the same with the other one, but I've speeded up a bit because you just watched me do that one, and it's really exactly the same. So piece of wire through, bend up the short end, use the longer end, and go whizzing round loads of times to create a sort of dunce's cap. That doesn't sound very nice. Let's call it something else. What about a pixie's cap? But a little pointed cap at the top. If you don't have any briolettes, you could use a normal bead, and if you're careful you can get a similar effect, but it is more difficult. So you could just put a loop through it and go around and onto it with the loop. It doesn't have to look exactly like this. These little onion briolettes that I'm using are also a little bit more difficult to source than the standard briolette. Standard briolettes you can find all over the place, but these little onion ones are more difficult to find. I think the only place I'll actually find mine is various sellers on Etsy, and I go through Etsy and I get them from there. So there we go. I have 2 really cute little lemon quartz briolettes, and now I'm going to do the little tiny peridot ones because they're the next in size, and I'm going to have them hanging at the side. So standard briolettes are very, very easy to source, and you can probably get them for just about all over. There are lots and lots of them for sale on places like eBay, things like that. But the onion ones are a little more difficult. Now, I don't know whether you noticed that, but I actually twisted the wires together on this one. and that was to give me a V shape to work on, because this little peridot one is so little that there was nothing there to actually wrap around to start with. So I put the wire through and then sort of twisted the two wires together. That would create the V at the top of the bead former, and then I wrap the wires around that. Trim it off close and press it down. Oops. Fingers are a good tool. If your pliers won't play, use your fingers to squidge them, especially when you're using something soft like this. And do the same now with the other one. I'll show you that bit where I put the two wires together and twist. So I've gone up, I've wrapped around, and then I've just, you see, twist the bead, and then it makes like a little point at the top that I can then wrap the longer piece of wire around. It's just a starting point, really. Don't be too worried about having them matching perfectly. Again, it's meant to be a nature type thing. These look really, really cute to use on their own as well. You could just, if you didn't want to do all the fancy framework, you could just do the little briolette with the little wiggly top and have that hanging on a jump ring, on an earring. They look gorgeous, even to the point of using it like a pendant. So let's just get that pressed down. There we go. So I'm going to add those to the frame as well. So round those pliers on, make a loop all the way around, and then thread that through at the side of the larger one. Maybe you don't want to put it there, maybe you want to put it in the circle above. Feel free, I don't mind. But wherever it goes, just make sure it's on nice and securely. So I'm wrapping around several times. Go back down there and make sure you're tight, and then trim off any end bits. Of course you don't want little sharp bits to stab, they're not nice or comfortable. And press that in. Now remember when we talked about things being a mirror image, do remember when you're putting your beads on as well. So if my little green one there is on the inside, the little green one on the other side also needs to be on the inside. When you're wearing them in the self, it really doesn't matter, but if you are making these to sell, and they do sell very well to these, you will have people say that one don't match. Although I always told my customers that it really didn't make any difference because your ears don't match. Majority of people have one ear that's either higher, you know, or different shape to the other one. So if we're being perfectly normal, your ears don't match either, so having earrings that don't match is just in keeping with it. Press that end in and pop that down. I'm always careful to make sure that I've got them put down so they are in a position where it's mirrored, and then I'm reminded all the time. Now you remember what I said about having this loop on, and we don't want our little briolettes to slither off. Well, this is the way we're going to stop it. Taking some of my fine wire, sorry, let me just get this so that you can see what I'm doing as well as me, and I'm just going to wrap that into the loop there, and I'm going to wrap it around, probably, actually I'm going to put it at the other end because if I pull that way I might pull them loose, so let's pop it in there. Not that it really makes that much difference, but, and I'm going to wrap that around, I don't know, 3 or 4 times, just so it's nice and firm. Once or twice is not going to do the trick. And there the dog goes again. We'll just ignore that. Wrapping through. Actually, she keeps barking like this, I'm going to have to put a photo of her at the end of the video so you can see what she looks like. Pop that through there. bit like credits. And the dog barking goes to Bella. Right, let's just pop that round there. Try and cut off any ends at the back. It doesn't really make that much difference when it's as fine as this is, and it's going against the flat face. But and you see what I said about them slipping out? Well, it's already slipped out. Isn't it amazing that it can slip out, but it won't go back in? Let me open that up again. There, just open it a little bit, and I can push that briolet back in and then close it up. Now this is what we're aiming to stop. So with our little wire, let me just slide it further up. There we go. I'm going to put a tiny bead here. I'm trying to make sure that as I wrap the wire around, that the wire is sort of coming over the top when the bead goes in, rather than underneath, because the bead then stands towards the front. It's raised more. So if I could find the hole, which I can't because these beads are that tiny that even with my glasses on, maybe I need stronger glasses. My goddaughter would probably say that I needed binoculars. I think she might be right. Right, let's just pop that down. And then take it across to the other side. The wires that we're putting in place and the bead that we're putting in place act as a block to make sure that those little dangles we put on don't get anywhere near that gap, because it's held. The bead is stopping the wires that we're fastening the bead on with slipping up because the bead's in the way, and the bead and those wires are then stopping the little dangles that we put on moving into the way. Let me just straighten that up. It's trying to kink as it goes through. You're always better stopping a kink before it happens than allowing it to actually kink and then trying to straighten out, because sometimes the wire can then snap in the area where it got bent. Sorry, I'm taking this out a shot, aren't I? That's better. Let's get back in. I've got a reasonable length here. I've probably got, I don't know, maybe 8 inches of wire. So I'm just going to take the wire and I'm going to take this darker stone, and I think I want it in that little dimple there. Come back. So I will wrap around 2 or 3 times, nice and neat. These little tiny emerald beads that I've got are little tiny, they're like flat discs. But that doesn't matter. If you've got circles, use circles. If you've got briolettes, use briolettes, pear shapes, whatever you've got, it doesn't matter. As long as you hold it firm and then continue to wrap the wire around. So we have a little bead. Now then, I'm going to go over to the other side of that curl, wrap round a couple of times, and then I'm going to add a little tiny silver bead. These are 2mm silver beads. Teeny tiny little things. I don't like spilling them out onto the table because otherwise they fall over the floor, and then when I pick them up from the floor they then get fluff in them from my wonderful fluffy dogs. Right, so let me get that there. Now I'm just placing that so it sits at the junction of that curl, which is kind of nice. So my wire's coming back down, but that doesn't matter. Once I've wrapped around a couple of times I can just go back up. Now, I was going to put something in the curl, but I don't think I want anything in the curl. I think I like it. So I'll just wrap around a little further. And let's get another bead. What shall we have? Shall we have some amethyst? Again, these are, they're like little squelched blobby shapes. They're not quite chip-ins. They're definitely smaller than that. But it's just a very uneven shape, which are kind of nice for these because they're not regulated. So let's just pop that there. And then let's have another one. Seems to be a very pale one, that one that I've put on. Maybe this one will be a little bit darker. There used to be a time when I would spend ages matching the colours, and if I was making a pair of earrings I would try and make sure that every bead I used was the right colour and the right size. But I found it doesn't look as nice, it doesn't look as natural. If I just take the next bead and use it, rather than faffing about and picking and choosing, it actually looks an awful lot better. They're far more natural. So let's have another little dark green one. Sorry, I shouldn't say dark green one, should I say emerald? Yes. Made with precious gemstones. Where should we put that? Should we put that near the top? Yeah, we can do. I can actually wrap it so that it goes in between that bead and into that little bump bit that we created. In you go. Now don't get too giddy with what you're doing. You've still got to make another one. You've got to make another one that matches. So if you get, you know, oh yes, I'll have 3 pieces here and 1 sticking on top, you've got to do it all over again. So whatever you're doing, you have to remember that you're going to have to repeat it on the other earring. That, come here, little tiny silver one. I just think it needs one in there. These actually might be 1mm, I'm not sure. They are very, very little. I'm just going to put that in the middle there. And go through again. So it's held in place. More wrapping just to make sure everything's firm. I'm getting to the point now where I'm not going to get much more through that gap. It's becoming difficult to actually put the wire through. But I wrap round 2 or 3 times, so I think that should be sufficient. So I'm just going to trim that off and press it down so that it's flat against the metal. And that is going to be our earring. Not too over the top, you need to be able to wear this in your ear. So now I'm going to do exactly the same thing to the other earring. I'm not going to make you watch all that. There we go. So we've got 2 earrings with similar beads on. I'm not going to say exactly the same, but the beads placed in roughly the same positions. Holding them together like this, I can get my round nose pliers and grip right across the top and just put a little bend in. Then I can make my loop there. If I wanted more on, I could put it on afterwards, but I think it'll be alright. All the way over and down the back. It's a nice long stem. Do you see how I just pushed that little loop in so that it just sits forward? I'll show you again. So grip it, bend it back, and then you just use the pliers to twist down and get that little bump that sits so nicely on the ear. Now I will have to file these bits on the bottom and give them a good file, but I don't have my file handy, so I shall do that when I oxidize it. But basically those are your little tiny fine earrings, really delicate. You can leave them bright silver like that, or like me, I like to oxidize. So I've oxidized them to finish off, show up the detail, and then all I have to do is wear them. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed them. Happy wrapping.